The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the reception hall. White roses and baby's breath adorned every table, and the dance floor gleamed under the soft lights. Natalie Bennett, now Natalie Reynolds, stood at the edge of the dance floor in her ivory gown, watching her husband of exactly 4 hours as he tapped a knife against his champagne flute. The chatter died down as Marcus cleared his throat. 6 feet tall with dark hair and the kind of smile that had made Natalie weak in the knees since their first date 3 years ago, he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine in his tailored tuxedo. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Natalie and I are so grateful to have you here to celebrate with us." He turned toward her, extending his hand. The DJ transitioned to their song, All of Me by John Legend. As Natalie stepped forward, Marcus's eyes locked with hers, and the rest of the room seemed to fade away. But then he spoke again, this time only loud enough for those nearest to hear. "This dance is for the woman I've loved for 10 years. Natalie froze mid-step. The smile remained fixed on her face, but her mind raced. 10 years? They'd only met 3 years ago. She felt the eyes of their closest friends and family members on her as she tried to process his words. Her sister-in-law Elena shot her a confused glance from the head table. Natalie's best friend Zoe, who had been dancing with her husband, stopped and stared. As Marcus pulled her into his arms, Natalie whispered through her smile, "What did you just say?" He spun her gently, his expression betraying nothing. "You heard me." "But we met 3 years ago," she said, her voice tight. "What are you talking about?" Marcus simply smiled, dipping her low as the music swelled. When he brought her back up, his lips brushed her ear and he whispered, "Some secrets are worth keeping, even on your wedding day." 3 weeks later, Natalie sat in her office at the architectural firm where she worked, staring blankly at the blueprint on her computer screen. Her wedding band felt heavy on her finger as she twisted it absently. Their honeymoon in Bali had been perfect. Lazy mornings in their private villa, afternoons exploring temples and beaches, evenings watching the sunset with cocktails in hand. Marcus had been attentive, loving, passionate. Yet his words from the wedding reception haunted her. When she'd asked him about it again on their honeymoon, he'd laughed it off. "I meant it figuratively, Nat. Like I've been waiting my whole life for someone like you." It sounded reasonable. Maybe even romantic. But something in his eyes when he'd said it at the reception, a flash of something secretive, almost mischievous, had planted a seed of doubt that refused to die. Her office phone rang, startling her. "Natalie Reynolds," she answered automatically, still getting used to her new surname. "Mrs. Reynolds. This is Shelley from Dr. Abernathy's office. We're calling about your husband's prescription refill." Natalie frowned. "My husband doesn't see Dr. Abernathy." "Oh." There was a pause. "Marcus Reynolds?" "He's been Dr. Abernathy's patient for years. There must be some mistake. My husband sees Dr. Chen. I'm sorry for the confusion. We must have the wrong number." After hanging up, Natalie stared at the phone. Marcus had always said he saw Dr. Chen at the medical center downtown. In the 3 years they'd been together, he'd never mentioned a Dr. Abernathy. That evening, as they prepared dinner in their new home, a renovated brownstone they'd purchased 2 months before the wedding, Natalie casually brought it up. "The strangest thing happened today. Some doctor's office called for you. Dr. Abernathy?" Marcus was chopping bell peppers at the kitchen island. His hand stilled for a fraction of a second before he continued. "Probably a mix-up." "Never heard of him." "Her," Natalie corrected. "The receptionist seemed pretty sure you were a patient." Well, she was wrong. He scooped up the peppers and added them to the stir-fry sizzling in the wok. "How was your day otherwise? Did you finish the Westbrook proposal?" The swift change of subject wasn't lost on Natalie, but she let it go. Until later that night, when Marcus was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, Natalie would never check his messages, but something compelled her to glance at the screen. A text from Elena read, "Did you tell her yet?" "It's been 3 weeks," Natalie frowned. Elena was her sister-in-law, married to Marcus's brother Daniel. Why would she be texting Marcus about telling Natalie something? And why did she sound so Familiar? The shower turned off. Natalie quickly moved away from the nightstand and pretended to be engrossed in her book when Marcus emerged in a cloud of steam, towel wrapped around his waist. "Bathroom's all yours," he said, dropping a kiss on the top of her head as he passed. As Natalie showered, her mind raced with possibilities. Was Marcus hiding something? Was Elena involved somehow? Or was she letting her imagination run wild over a coincidental phone call and an innocent text? The next day, Natalie found herself parked outside the medical building where Dr. Abernathy supposedly practiced. She hadn't planned to come here, had actually told herself she was being ridiculous, but after a sleepless night, she'd made an impulsive decision during her lunch break. Inside, she approached the reception desk. "I'd like to make an appointment with Dr. Abernathy." The receptionist, her name tag read Shelley, smiled. "Of course. Are you a new patient?" "Yes, but my husband sees her." "Marcus Reynolds?" Recognition flickered in Shelley's eyes. "Oh yes, Mr. Reynolds. Dr. Abernathy is his cardiologist. How is he doing with the new medication?" "Cardiologist? New medication?" Marcus had never mentioned any heart issues. "He's fine," Natalie managed to say. "When was his last appointment?" Shelley checked the computer. "About 2 months ago. He's due for a follow-up next week." Natalie thanked her and left without making an appointment, her mind spinning. As she sat in her car, she pulled out her phone and called Marcus's brother. "Daniel, it's Natalie. I need to ask you something. Has Marcus ever had heart problems?" There was a pause. "Why are you asking?" "Just answer the question, please," Daniel sighed. "Yes, he had a minor heart attack when he was 25. He doesn't like to talk about it." Natalie gripped the steering wheel. "That was about 10 years ago, wasn't it?" "Yes, right after his graduation from med school. 10 years. The same time frame Marcus had mentioned at their wedding. Daniel, who was with him when it happened? Who found him?" Another pause, longer this time. "Natalie, I think you should talk to Marcus about this. Please, Daniel. I need to know." It was Elena. She found him collapsed in his apartment and got him to the hospital in time. The doctors said if she'd been even 10 minutes later. He trailed off. Elena, the same name that had texted Marcus the night before. But Elena was Daniel's wife. She and Marcus were in-laws, nothing more. Elena had only entered their lives 2 years ago when she started dating Daniel. Hadn't she? "How long have you and Elena been together?" Natalie asked, trying to keep her voice steady. 2 years, Daniel confirmed. "Why all these questions, Natalie?" "Just curious," she said weakly. "Thanks, Daniel." She hung up and sat in her car, trying to make sense of it all. If Elena had found Marcus during his heart attack 10 years ago, but had only been dating Daniel for 2 years, then who was she to Marcus back then? That night, Natalie tried to act normal as she and Marcus ate dinner and watched a movie. When his phone buzzed again, he checked it, frowned slightly, and excused himself to make a call. Natalie could hear his muffled voice from the home office. When he returned, she asked casually, "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff," he said, settling back beside her on the couch. One of my patients had a question about their medication. Another lie? Or was she becoming paranoid? The next morning, Natalie called in sick to work and waited until Marcus left for the hospital where he worked as an anesthesiologist. Then she began searching their home. In the back of his closet, she found a locked metal box. The key wasn't anywhere obvious, but Natalie remembered Marcus always kept a spare key in his golf bag for the storage unit where they kept their seasonal decorations. On a hunch, she checked the small zippered pocket of the bag. The key fit perfectly. Inside the box, she found documents, medical records, old prescription labels, and a stack of photographs. With trembling hands, Natalie spread the photos on the bedroom floor. There was Marcus, 10 years younger, his arm around a woman with honey blonde hair and a brilliant smile. They stood in front of the Eiffel Tower on a beach at what appeared to be a graduation ceremony. The woman wore a white coat like Marcus, another doctor. In the last photo, Marcus was in a hospital bed, looking pale but smiling. The blonde woman sat beside him holding his hand. Written on the back in feminine handwriting, "The day I almost lost you. Never again. Love, E.E. Elena." But the woman in the photos wasn't the Elena that Natalie knew. This wasn't Daniel's wife, who had dark hair and olive skin. This was someone else entirely. At the bottom of the box, she found an old phone, one of those flip phones from years ago. Natalie plugged it into a charger and waited for it to power up. There were hundreds of text messages in the inbox, all from E. Miss you already. Can't wait to see you this weekend. Thinking of you always. The last message was dated just 3 months before Natalie met Marcus, her hands shaking. She reached for her own phone and called Elena, Daniel's wife. Natalie? Is everything okay? Elena's accented voice answered. Elena, I need to ask you something. Before you met Daniel, did you know Marcus? What? No, of course not. I met him the same night I met Daniel at that charity gala. Why? No reason, Natalie said quickly. Just trying to piece together some family history. Thanks. So the Elena who texted Marcus wasn't Daniel's wife. It was someone else. Someone from his past. Someone he'd apparently loved for 10 years. That afternoon, Natalie sat in the parking lot of Metro General Hospital, where Marcus worked. She'd called his department and was told he was in surgery until 3 p.m. It was now 3:30, and she was waiting to see him emerge. When he finally appeared at the main entrance, he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a blonde woman in a white doctor's coat, the same woman from the photographs. They weren't touching, but they walked closely, engaged in conversation. The woman laughed at something Marcus said, and Natalie could see her husband's face light up in response. They parted ways at the parking lot, the woman heading toward the east side while Marcus turned west, toward where his car was parked, not far from where Natalie was watching. On impulse, Natalie started her car and followed the blonde woman, keeping a discreet distance. 20 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of a high-rise apartment building in one of the city's upscale neighborhoods. Natalie parked and approached the building's directory. She scanned the names until one jumped out at her. E. Reynolds. Reynolds. The same last name as Marcus. As her Natalie felt dizzy, she steadied herself against the wall, trying to breathe. What was happening? Who was this woman? She left the building in a daze and drove home, her mind churning with possibilities, each one worse than the last. By the time Marcus arrived home, Natalie had worked herself into a state of cold fury. He found her sitting at the kitchen island, the contents of the metal box spread out before her. Natalie, he said, his face draining of color. What are you doing with those? Who is she? Natalie asked, her voice surprisingly steady. The woman in these photos. The one you were with at the hospital today. The one who shares our last name. Marcus set down his bag slowly. How did you— Answer the question, Marcus. He sank into a chair across from her. Her name is Eleanor Reynolds. She's a cardiologist at Metro General, and she's my sister. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Your sister? My half-sister, technically. Same father, different mothers. Natalie stared at him. You never told me you had a sister. We've been estranged for a while? Until today, apparently, Natalie said coldly. And all these photos. These texts? Love, eh? She's writing as your sister? Marcus ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated, Nat. Then explain it to me. Because right now, it looks like you've been having an affair with this woman for over a decade, possibly continuing into our marriage. It's not an affair. It was never an affair. He took a deep breath. Eleanor and I grew up separately. I lived with our father after my parents divorced. She lived with her mother. We didn't meet until I was in medical school and she was doing her residency at the same hospital. And we didn't know we were related at first. We started dating. Natalie felt her stomach drop. You dated your sister? We didn't know, Marcus insisted. Neither of us knew about the other. Our father kept us separate, had 2 completely different families. It wasn't until we'd been together for almost a year that we found out the truth. How? She came to my apartment one day upset. Her mother had just died, and while going through her things, she'd found letters from my father. Letters that made it clear he was leading a double life. When she showed me the photos of him that she'd found, I recognized him immediately. He swallowed hard. We were devastated. What we had, it wasn't just casual dating. We were in love, planning a future. Natalie felt ill. So at the wedding, when you said you'd loved her for 10 years, I meant Eleanor, yes. Not romantically, not anymore. But as my sister, as the person who saved my life when I had my heart attack, as my best friend. He reached for Natalie's hand, but she pulled away. I've been trying to tell you about her since we got married. She wants to meet you, to be part of our lives. Then why all the secrecy? Why keep her existence from me for 3 years? Marcus's expression clouded. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't know how to explain that I'd been in a relationship with my own sister, even unknowingly. Because every time I tried to bring it up, I couldn't find the right words. He paused. And because I was afraid you'd react exactly like this. Like what? Natalie demanded. Like someone who's just discovered her husband has been lying to her since the day they met? I never lied about loving you, Natalie. What Eleanor and I had ended the moment we discovered the truth. We've spent the last decade trying to rebuild a sibling relationship from the ashes of something else. And the text? Did you tell her yet? What was that about? Eleanor wants to meet you. She's been pushing me to introduce you two properly, to bring her back into my life, into our life, as family. He looked down at the photos spread across the counter. I've been a coward, and I'm sorry. Natalie stood up, needing space. I need to process this. I don't know what I need. I understand, Marcus said quietly. For what it's worth, I really was going to tell you everything. I just didn't know how. Natalie grabbed her keys and purse. I'm going to stay at Zoe's tonight. I need to think. As she drove to her best friend's apartment, Natalie's mind reeled with everything she'd learned. Marcus had dated his own sister, had loved her, had kept her existence secret for the entire duration of their relationship. Was she overreacting? It wasn't as if he'd cheated on her. The relationship with Eleanor had ended long before he met Natalie. And they hadn't known they were related when they were together. But the secrecy, the lies by omission, that was harder to forgive. At Zoe's place, after explaining everything through tears and several glasses of wine, Natalie found herself asking the question that had been nagging at her. Do you think he still loves her? Not as a sister, but Zoe considered this. From what you've told me, they've had 10 years to figure out their new relationship. If there were still inappropriate feelings, would they really be trying to reconnect openly now? It was a fair point. But another thought occurred to Natalie. What if she still loves him? What if she never stopped? Then that's her issue to deal with, not yours or Marcus's. Zoe squeezed her hand. The question is, do you believe Marcus when he says he loves you? Did she? Despite everything, despite the shock and betrayal she felt, Natalie couldn't deny the love she'd shared with Marcus these past 3 years. The way he looked at her, the life they'd built together. Yes, she whispered. I believe he loves me, but I don't know if I can trust him anymore. The next day, Natalie returned home to find Marcus sitting at the kitchen table, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. When he saw her, he stood, uncertainty written across his face. I thought about not coming back, she said, setting down her overnight bag. About filing for an annulment and pretending these last 3 years never happened. He flinched, but remained silent. But I realized something, Natalie continued. I don't know, Eleanor. I don't know what happened between you two beyond what you've told me. And I can't make a decision about our marriage based on half-truths and assumptions. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to meet her, face to face, and I want the whole truth from both of you. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay, I'll arrange it. 3 hours later, Natalie sat across from Eleanor Reynolds in a private room at a quiet restaurant downtown. Marcus sat between them, tension radiating from his rigid posture. In person, Eleanor was striking, tall and graceful, with intelligent eyes and that same honey-blonde hair from the photographs, though cut shorter now. She extended her hand to Natalie with a warm smile. I've been looking forward to meeting you properly, she said. Marcus has told me so much about you. Funny, Natalie replied coolly. He never mentioned you until yesterday. Eleanor's smile faltered. Yes, well, that's my brother for you, always trying to protect everyone, even when it's not necessary. She gave Marcus a pointed look, or wanted. I think we should skip the small talk, Natalie said. I want to know everything. How you met, what happened when you found out you were related, and why Marcus felt the need to keep you a secret for 3 years? Eleanor nodded. Direct, I like that. She took a sip of her water. Marcus and I met at Chicago Memorial during his 3rd year of medical school. I was doing my cardiology residency there. We literally bumped into each other in the cafeteria. He spilled coffee all over my white coat. Despite herself, Natalie felt a small smile tug at her lips. It was exactly how she'd met Marcus, except it had been her coffee spilled on his coat. We started dating, Eleanor continued. It was intense from the beginning. We both felt this connection, like we'd known each other forever. She glanced at Marcus, who was staring at his hands. When my mother died and I found those letters, it was like the universe was playing some cosmic joke on us. The man I was in love with was my half-brother. What did you do? Natalie asked. We broke up immediately, of course, Marcus answered. But it wasn't that simple. You can't just turn off feelings like that, even when you know they're wrong. We kept our distance for a while, Eleanor added. Almost a year. But then Marcus had his heart attack, and I was the one who found him. Her voice caught. The doctors said if I'd been even 10 minutes later, he would have died. Why were you at his apartment if you'd broken up? I'd been trying to reach him for days, Eleanor explained. Our father had just died, and I thought Marcus should know even though they weren't close. When he didn't answer my calls, I went to check on him. After that, Marcus said, we had to figure out how to be in each other's lives again. As siblings, nothing more. It was difficult. There were boundaries we had to establish, feelings we had to work through. But we did it, Eleanor insisted. We built a new relationship, a healthy one. She looked directly at Natalie. I love my brother, Natalie. As my brother. And I've been pushing him for years to tell you about me because I want to be part of your lives. As family, nothing more. Natalie studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. And the text the other night? Did you tell her yet? Eleanor smiled ruefully. I've been asking him that question since your engagement. I even threatened to crash your wedding if he didn't introduce us properly beforehand. Which explains his strange toast, Natalie realized. He was trying to acknowledge you without revealing everything. Typical Marcus, Eleanor said with a shake of her head. Always trying to find the middle ground, even when there isn't one. Natalie turned to her husband. Why, Marcus? Why keep her from me all this time? Did you think I wouldn't understand? Marcus met her gaze, his eyes pained. At first I was ashamed. How do you tell the woman you're falling in love with that you were once in love with your own sister? Then, as time went on, it became harder and harder to find the right moment. The longer I waited, the worse it seemed. He was afraid, Eleanor said softly. Afraid you'd look at him differently. Afraid you'd leave? I nearly did anyway, Natalie pointed out. Secrets have a way of coming out eventually. I know, Marcus acknowledged. I made a terrible mistake and I'm sorry. But please believe me when I say that what Eleanor and I had ended long before I met you. What I feel for you, Natalie, it's real. It's always been real. Natalie took a deep breath, studying both their faces. I have one more question. For Eleanor, she steeled herself. Are you still in love with him? Eleanor didn't flinch. No, I love him as my brother. And that's all he is to me now. She reached across the table, not for Marcus's hand, but for Natalie's. I've been waiting 3 years to welcome you to our family, Natalie. I just want the chance to know my sister-in-law. The sincerity in her eyes was unmistakable. Natalie found herself squeezing Eleanor's hand back. Okay, she said finally. I believe you both. But Marcus, she turned to her husband, no more secrets, ever. I mean it. I promise, he said, relief washing over his features. No more secrets. 1 year later, Natalie adjusted the centerpiece on the dining table, stepping back to admire her work. The anniversary dinner she'd planned was coming together perfectly. Marcus's favorite foods, candles, the works. The past year had been a journey of rebuilding trust. There had been therapy, both couples and individual hard conversations, and moments when Natalie had questioned whether their marriage could survive the shaky foundation it had been built on. But there had also been growth. Marcus had opened up parts of himself that had been closed off for years. Natalie had learned to trust her instincts while also giving second chances. And Eleanor had become a fixture in their lives, a friend to Natalie, and yes, a sister. The doorbell rang. Natalie checked her watch, 7:30 on the dot. Eleanor was nothing if not punctual. "Come in," she called, giving the wine glasses one final polish. "Everything's almost ready." Eleanor entered, a bottle of champagne in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. She'd cut her hair even shorter since Natalie had first met her, the blonde pixie cut framing her face elegantly. "Happy anniversary," she said, kissing Natalie's cheek. "Where's my brother?" "Getting changed." "Surgery ran late." Natalie took the champagne. "You didn't have to bring anything." "Of course I did. It's not every day my favorite couple celebrates their first anniversary." Marcus appeared from the bedroom, his face lighting up at the sight of his sister. "Allie, you made it." "Wouldn't miss it," she said, embracing him. "Though I'm still not entirely sure why I'm invited to your anniversary dinner." Natalie and Marcus exchanged a look. "Because," Natalie said, "we have something to tell you." They settled around the table, glasses filled with the champagne Eleanor had brought. Before they could make their announcement, Eleanor raised her glass. "To my brother and sister-in-law," she said. "When Marcus first told me he'd met someone special, I knew she must be extraordinary. And you are, Natalie. You found out about our complicated past, and instead of running, you faced it head-on. You gave us both a chance to be a family again," she smiled. "To love in all its complicated forms." They clinked glasses, and Natalie felt a wave of affection for this woman who had gone from being a secret to being family. "So," Eleanor said, taking a sip, "what's this news you wanted to share?" Marcus reached for Natalie's hand, squeezing it gently. "We're pregnant." Eleanor's eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Really? I'm going to be an aunt?" Natalie nodded, her own eyes damp. "Due in 7 months." Eleanor leaped up to hug them both, her joy palpable. "This is incredible." "Have you told anyone else yet?" "Just our parents," Marcus said. "We wanted you to be among the first to know." As Eleanor peppered them with questions about due dates and nursery plans, Natalie watched her husband. The love in his eyes when he looked at her was unmistakable, deep and true and meant only for her. Later that night, after Eleanor had gone and they were getting ready for bed, Marcus wrapped his arms around Natalie from behind, his hands resting gently on her still flat stomach. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance." "For building this life with me. For loving me despite my mistakes." Natalie turned in his arms to face him. "You know, when you said at our wedding that the dance was for the woman you'd loved for 10 years, I never imagined this is where we'd end up." "I should have been clearer," he acknowledged. "It wasn't my finest moment." "No," she agreed. "But maybe it was necessary. Without that slip, without my investigation, without meeting Eleanor, we might not be where we are now." "And where is that?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Natalie smiled, placing her hand over his where it rested on her abdomen. "Building a family. All of us." Marcus kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and future and love, a love that had weathered secrets and pain and emerged stronger. Outside their window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Inside, in the warmth of their embrace, Natalie felt the last of her doubts fade away. This was what mattered, not the past, but the future they were creating together. A future that, thanks to a dance and a decade-old secret, now included not just the two of them, but a sister, a child, and a family made whole through forgiveness and truth. As Marcus deepened the kiss, Natalie knew with certainty that this moment, this man, this life was exactly where she was meant to be. The journey had been unexpected, but the destination was worth every step.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.